Were you disappointed when that debate finished that Trump played it the way he did?
I thought it finished strong. I felt that Trump's closing statement was excellent. I agree with you, Piers. He should have given the closing statement probably as the introductory statement. I thought Trump did very well for the first 20 or 25 minutes. I thought that was a pretty clear victory. And then when Kamala, quite good at manipulating people, was able to get him to fall for the trap on the crowd sizes, that did throw things. However, that was also when the moderators stepped in, the so-called moderators. And so you really did have a 3-on-1 debate at that point. There were missed opportunities, but Cenk earlier mentioned that President Trump said all sorts of things that aren't true. And the example he used was the notion of post-birth abortion, the notion that babies are killed through abortion after birth. And Lindsay Davis, who was one of the so-called moderators, made this point when she fact-checked Trump. But she was wrong, and Cenk is wrong, and this is really happening. And the irony of it is that one of the chief proponents of killing babies who survive abortion after birth is Kamala Harris's own running mate, Tim Walz. This is not difficult to look up. Within the past couple of years, Governor Walz in Minnesota repealed legal requirements that would force doctors who have babies who have survived abortions to provide medical care for them as they would to any other patient. So that is happening. When President Trump quoted the Democrat governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, who said that after a baby is born, if the mother doesn't want it, they'll have a conversation with the doctor, see what they're going to do. That's on tape. You don't need to take my word for it. You can go watch it on tape. So there were multiple instances of the moderators intervening and lying on Kamala's behalf, and then they never at any point fact-checked Kamala's lies. So I agree. I'm not saying it was the greatest performance ever. I think there were a number of missed opportunities from President Trump. I suspect his campaign advisors told him not to get aggressive. I thought it was crazy that he never called out the moderators. People always ought to attack the media in politics.
Do you know what I thought? You know what I thought, Michael? I just thought at the end that he was a bit boring, Trump. And the one thing he cannot be is boring. Because the point of Trump is he's so different to every other politician. He either makes you laugh, or he shocks you, or he's combative, or there's stuff always going on, which is compelling. I just didn't find Trump very compelling last night. I just felt that he was very repetitive, and he got caught in various traps that were laid for him way too easily. But ultimately, I just thought he wasn't very entertaining either. So on every level, he wasn't Trump-like.
I agree there were a few moments where there should have been more pizzazz, but then don't forget when he was talking about the cats and the dogs and the Haitian migrants, which we're all calling it a discredited story. But of course, there are Springfield residents talking about this, and really all of the kind of evocative graphic details are really just there to call people's attention to the fact that Kamala Harris brought 300,000 people from a failed state with rampant cannibalism into the middle of America. That's something that most Americans don't like. When he did get a little spicier, he had some good lines about sending Kamala Harris a MAGA hat and how her economic policy that she stole from Biden and from him amounted to run, spot, run. There were some decent lines. I just felt he had to get aggressive in a different way, and he especially has to get aggressive on the moderators if they're going to intervene.
Yeah, because I don't think he's worked out quite how to do that with Kamala Harris.
Cenk started off very rightly talking about how Republicans and Donald Trump seem unhinged by perpetuating these ideas that dogs and cats are being eaten and that women are having post-birth abortions. And the first thing that Michael does when he comes on here is perpetuate these exact claims. Look, you guys can do this until you're blue in the face.
With evidence.
I don't know how to convey the extent to which when Republicans say this kind of stuff, it does not resonate with normal people. And you seem crazy. And Donald Trump went out there on stage, got laughed at by the entire nation. And then, Michael, you come on here and you do the exact same thing. So please, triple down on this. Quadruple down on this. Make this election a referendum on this bogus notion that women are executing their babies after they're born. I beg of you, we'll see how that works out.
Okay.
Well, Brian, just to respond briefly, Brian, all I did was refer to the law that Kamala Harris's running mate passed as the governor of Minnesota, the position that he currently holds. So, if you think that sounds crazy or wild, or I don't know what to tell you, then I suppose we're living in different countries. I think Cenk made a much better point than Brian just made. And Cenk's point was that Americans want change. They don't like the status quo. And I think that's absolutely true. And I do think this was the missed opportunity of the debate. The status quo is Kamala Harris.
Right.
She's the vice president. She's been imbued with presidential authority on immigration and other issues. So the change agent is Donald Trump here. That's what the debate's got to be about. That's what the election focus has to be about.
As you know, the conservatives here talking about post-birth abortion, really name one case in the entire country where a woman had a baby and then executed it, and the state said, oh, that's totally okay. We allow post-birth abortions.
There were 8 cases.
You can't name one case because it's never happened, and you guys sound absolutely nuts when you say it. So I agree with Brian. Keep saying nuts-so things. In fact, hold on, I'm not done yet. Hold on. And then now they're attacking the moderators. Attacking the moderators is so weak. First of all, there's no crying in politics. So when you cry about the moderators, you're just telling everybody we lost the debate. Thank you for admitting it.
Michael, I'm going to play a mashup of all Kamala's facial expressions because she kept turning and looking directly at Trump, and it was quite effective. Let's take a look.
In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but if she ever got elected, she'd change it. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, like they have, and policies like they have, I don't say her because she has no policy.
Now, Michael, it was a very deliberate aesthetic thing that she was doing, which was to keep turning to Trump and kind of laugh at him, mock him, look aghast at him, and so on. And, you know, you can look at it 2 ways. You could say she overhammed it, but I did think it was quite effective to viewers watching at home.
I found it wore a little bit thin, but de gustibus non disputandum est, so, you know, people's mileage may vary with that. There was a real irony with the rules around this debate and Kamala's facial and even vocal interjections, which is during that first debate back in June, Joe Biden wanted the mics to be cut when the opponent wasn't speaking. And Trump agreed to that eventually, and that rule ended up really helping Trump. Then in this debate, Kamala wanted the mics to be on so she could have her I'm speaking moment, and Trump insisted that the mics remain off. And ironically, it seems to have helped Kamala here, because I think had her mic been on and she had interjected with all of these rude remarks and her over-the-top facial expressions, I think it would have made Trump look even calmer and more presidential by comparison. So she did relatively well. And the other really impressive thing that she did in debate prep is she got rid of that crazy cackle. Yeah. That crazy cackle she's had on the campaign trail for decades at this point. That disappeared overnight. And whoever prepped her on that deserves a prize in political science.
He was asked in this debate whether he would sign a nationwide abortion ban multiple times, refused to answer it. You want to talk about a vision for the future? He won't talk about what he's offering for the future. He's solely focused on relitigating events of the past.
Brian, Donald Trump on his campaign website, the first link is the platform page. It's a 20-point, fairly specific plan on what he will do on inflation, on immigration, on, he's said repeatedly he doesn't want a national abortion ban, on foreign affairs. Kamala Harris, until 2 days ago, did not have a policy page on her website. It was only when some of us in the conservative media pointed out that she was lacking in this vision that they threw one up, and it was shown by the source code that much of it was stolen from Biden. The rest of it was stolen from Trump. So I agree she had a rather good night, obviously with a lot of help from the ABC moderators, but I think it is preposterous to say that she presented a vision for the future. There was very little policy substance discussed at all. And if there is going to be a second debate, this I think would be the silver lining in the storm cloud for Republicans, is President Trump needs to make sure that the focus is entirely on policy. They open up asking Kamala about the economy. She starts talking about when she was a little girl in the middle class or whatever. They bring up immigration. She starts talking about crowd sizes. She has got nothing on policy because the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden record on policy has been 3.5 years of unmitigated failure. If Trump can focus on that in the next debate, he wins.
I mean, I hope Trump listens to some of this stuff because he can get very pig-headed when he's got his back to the wall a bit. He doesn't like being criticized. He gets very defensive. But that's probably not the response that he needs right now. He needs to listen to critical friends, doesn't he?
Of course. And I think what Dan said is basically exactly right there. There was one good point that Trump landed in the debate on Ukraine. when he said, after Kamala boasted that she went over to negotiate with Zelensky and try to resolve this conflict that had been brewing between Russia and Ukraine, and Trump pointed out, he said, yeah, you went over, you tried to solve it, and then 3 days later the Russians invade. So clearly it didn't work out very well. And to Dan's point, you don't just need to take a Republican congressman or a Republican author's words for it. You can take Vladimir Zelensky's words for it. He says that the Russians invaded basically because of Biden. And Biden, in fact, in his own words, invited Putin to invade and said there wouldn't be much pushback if there were a minor incursion. So you see that on foreign policy. You see this issue on immigration, and all of the numbers Dan cited on the economy, I think, are quite apt. So then it puts Kamala in this very difficult position. She's now describing her platform as a new path forward, but of course she's the sitting vice president, and the current vice president's a vegetable, so she's probably effectively the president. How is this a new path forward? Well, if she's going to reject the policies of her own administration, what's she going to revert to? All of her previously stated policies when she did run for president in 2020, though she had to get out before the first votes were cast, were to the left of Bernie Sanders, and they were deeply unpopular. Medicare for all, including Medicare for all for illegal aliens, defund the police, bail rioters and criminals out of jail, which she did herself when she was raising money for them on Twitter, so on and so forth. This puts her in a really difficult position because either she's got to defend the unpopular and failed status quo, or the even more unpopular policies she ran on the first time. That's where Trump's got to pin her. He's got to put her in this place where either way she moves, she harms herself with the voters. And whoever prepares him for that next debate needs to make sure that that is where the focus is, and he's always looking out to avoid the landmines that she can sometimes successfully lay for him.
Michael, your final thought?
Well, I think Brian's point is demonstrably silly because Trump debated in a different way last night than he usually does. And so I suppose what I'm calling for, Piers, I think what you had suggested too, is that we get a little bit of that old Donald Trump back. That he go after the media, that he focus a little bit more on the issues, bring a little bit more pizzazz into it. Absolutely. He has to do that sort of thing. To your point, Brian, you say that Donald Trump does not appeal to the American people. He doesn't appeal even to the Republican base. That's why he's got to throw Ronna McDaniel out. Ronna McDaniel just left her position. And guess what? Donald Trump did something Kamala Harris was not able to do. Donald Trump was able to win the Republican primary for president. He was able to win his party's nomination fair and square through a process. Kamala Harris tried to win her party's nomination one time. She got thrown out of the race before the first vote was cast. And so she was able to finagle her way behind the scenes through a palace coup to get rid of the current president and take the nomination. Good for her. That's all very impressive. But I think this is why Kamala Harris made a big mistake by challenging Trump to another debate, because next time they might not be on the most liberal network news station. Next time they might not have a 3-on-1 debate. Next time, Donald Trump might have better preparation going in. And if that's the case, look, there's a reason that parties have primaries. It's to battle test their candidates. Kamala Harris remains completely untested. The debate was supposed to test her, but she didn't get any difficult questions whatsoever. And she had 2 people helping her out to beat Donald Trump. If we want to go for a round 2, I say, as a staunch Trump supporter, bring it on.